Stewart, are we so insignificant a part of global climate change that the carbon tax is bad policy?
Boy, if you follow that line of logic, we shouldn't contribute to global poverty relief. We shouldn't contribute to NATO. I mean, yeah, Canada's only 2% of world GDP and less than 2% of emissions. And Kris is right, it is a global problem. Finally, we actually have a global treaty since the Paris Agreement in 2015, where every country in the world has agreed to put a cap and ultimately to reduce their emissions. So I guess I want to just check, Kris, are you saying Canada shouldn't take action? We shouldn't reduce our emissions? Because right now there's only two countries in the world who've said they're not part of that treaty, and they're Iran and Libya. I mean, I don't think we want to join them as bedfellows. Every country in the world, including India, is saying that they're going to cap and reduce emissions. So I don't think it's a choice between one or the other. I don't think it's a choice between should Canada reduce its emissions or should we contribute to global solutions. We've got to do both. I mean, if Canada can't reduce our emissions, how can we expect other countries to? We're one of the highest per capita greenhouse gas emitters in the world. So we must. We've made a commitment to reduce emissions. And I guess I want to be clear, Kris, are you saying Canada should not meet its global climate targets?
I don't understand why people are so married to a carbon tax that is not reducing emissions in Canada as a way to solve a global emissions issue. For example, I'm from British Columbia. British Columbia has had a carbon tax since 2008. Outside of lockdown years where the government was shutting down businesses, for example, in 2020, we have seen emissions steadily rise in British Columbia, along with the carbon tax. And back then, when the government first introduced the carbon tax in British Columbia in 2008, they said many things. They said it was going to stop at $30 per ton. They said it was going to reduce the emissions. And they said that it was going to create a plethora of alternative, affordable energies so people could switch away from oil and gas. Today, none of those things is true. Not one of them. We are now tied to a mandatory minimum of $80 per ton for carbon. What that means in normal people talk is that it's 17 cents extra per liter of gasoline and 21 cents extra per liter of diesel. Despite this carbon tax, the emissions in British Columbia are regularly and steadily going up. The Trudeau government used British Columbia as its model for its federal carbon tax. So we think that we should separate these two issues. The carbon tax is simply impoverishing the lowest income folks and middle income folks who are trying to fill up their minivans to get to work, who are trying to buy groceries, and who are trying to heat their home. For example, here in Alberta, it's going to tack an extra $400 or so in home heating just to heat your home in the winter this year with natural gas.
Okay, Stewart, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. So, Kris, you've avoided my question about whether you think Canada should meet our emission targets. So I want to come back to that because I actually want to have a clear answer from you on that. But you're entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts. So since the carbon price came in Canada in 2019, our emissions are down 5.5%, while GDP is up 6%. That's before COVID and after COVID, so that's not about COVID.
You're also using, you're also using the 2020 and 2021 rates there, where people weren't allowed to leave and had to stay in their bubble.
Okay, hang on, we got to let Stewart finish his point. Go ahead, Stewart.
Let you finish, be fair. So this is when the economy's rebounded, right? The GDP is up 6% since the carbon price came in. Emissions are down 5.5. Those are the numbers. BC is not, what you said isn't correct. Since the carbon price came in, BC's emissions are down 1%. And its GDP has grown 42% in that period. And the reason it's only down 1% is because BC's oil and gas industry has doubled in that period. So the oil and gas industry, people forget, northeastern BC is actually an oil and gas producer. So it's almost a quarter of BC's emissions.
That. Lots of people don't forget that.
So BC's emissions are down while its GDP growth has been higher.
You can take a look at the government data yourself. I've got the data sets on my computer.
Okay, well, people can look it up. So
that's not true.
BC's emissions are down 1%, but not down, so they're not down a ton, but they're down a bit. And their GDP growth has been bigger than any province in the country in that time. And the reason they're not down even more is because the oil and gas industry's doubled. But so let's look at the whole country though, right? That's the big picture.
How about we want to chat about affordability in a place like British Columbia and how the fact it's two carbon taxes are contributing to that?
Okay, folks, let me
impoverishing people and taking their money is not helping this issue.
Carbon price is generating about 40% of Canada's emission reductions. Almost half of our emission reductions come from the carbon price.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.